Hi, peace be upon you folks. I think I'm going to title this video End Time Prophecies and Rituals. End Time Prophecies and Rituals. So I would like to talk about what would seem like prophecies that are being fulfilled right now as you know. So I will talk about the Revelation 17 prophecy from the Christian perspective, and then I'll talk about a few prophecies from the Islamic perspective, and I'll give you my view on what I think is actually going on. For me, it seems a little puzzling, worrying, in fact, maybe a little frustrating that um, some of the things that happen, you do not see people being puzzled, being taking a step back and saying, wait a minute, that doesn't add up. Like, this doesn't make sense. What is happening? It seems like we're living in a matrix that people have bought into so much. They do not even see that this reality is uh, is manufactured. The reality is created. Like it's not a real reality. This is just a script that they're playing, right? I give you like what's happening right now, right? For example, you have two parties of Muslims, Iran being one major party and the Shia sect in Islam, and you have Saudi Arabia, another major party, being from the Sunni sect in Islam. These people have been at odds with each other for so long. And in fact, they've been fighting a proxy war in Yemen for almost a decade. All of a sudden, they have a meeting with China and they change their stance just like that. They're setting up embassies in their countries. They're trying to end the Yemen war. And people don't stop and think, wait a minute, these people have been fighting. What have they been fighting for? Right? Like all of a sudden China says something and that's it. Like nobody is puzzled by this. Nobody stops their daily activities just and be like, what is going on? This doesn't add up. Now, obviously, yes, there are other things that have been happening, right? The United States is losing that influence. Saudi Arabia is seeing that maybe they shouldn't align themselves with the United States. The United States can just betray you when they want, right? When their interests are no longer aligned, they will just, up and leave. And and in fact, if you go against them in one or two things, because of the power of the dollar, although Saudi also gives them that power of the dollar because of the oil and the petrodollar, but they can just sanction you, take away your goods, um, freeze your assets and things like that. So the United States has a lot of power. So a lot of nations are beginning to realize that maybe it's time to not be too aligned with the United States, but rather be aligned with China, which allows you to govern as you wish. For now, at least, that's how they seem, right? And they just concentrate on economic benefits that everybody can share, right? So it seems like a good idea. So Saudi Arabia has also expressed interest in being in the part of the BRICS. The BRICS is these nations that are setting up this world bank type thing that would replace the IMF, right? Um, I mean, I don't need to explain too much about it. I think people should be familiar with these things. So Saudi Arabia, Iran, they have expressed interest in joining the BRICS, and as such, right, they're becoming one now. So for me, it's like, okay, so what was the war for? Was it for the United States and Saudi, like their interest, maybe for oil, so that they get more power in the region, more control in the region? Because now, so if the war wasn't a war of ideals, a war of, oh, they are oppressed people there, let's help them, right? So it was a war of economics, a financial war. And this is what people don't get to see, right? A lot of these nations talk about their ideologies and their democracies. They're going to fight and bring democracies and freedom for the people. But it's never just that. It's about interest. It's about financial interest. Otherwise they would invade one, they would not invade one country and yet not invade another one because the two are similar, right? Um, anyway, so um, we're seeing this new order forming, right? Nowadays, as soon as people hear the word New World Order, there's this negative feeling about it because of the people who are setting up the New World Order. But in fact, when the Messiah comes, it would be a New World Order, right? Because think about it, there was an old world that was living in a type of lifestyle. He comes and sets up a new one to replace that one. So, in fact, it's a new world order. So, the name itself is not a bad thing, right? It's about the people who set it up and what their agenda is, what their goal is. So, it would seem like, anyway, let's go to Revelation 17. Then we can talk about what seems to be happening here. It says, then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and talked with me, saying to me, Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Right? So there is this woman, prostitute, harlot, that sits on many waters. I think there is an agreement, universal agreement in the Christendom that many waters talk about many peoples. So anyway, this is not anyway. So the kings of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of fornication. I think there's an important aspect to take from it as well. I saw the woman, I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus, right? So that's something else to remember from that. They describe the beast here. The beast that you saw was and is not, and will ascend out of the bottomless pit, right? So this beast existed before and no longer exists, and then is to come out of the bottomless pit, blah blah blah. So it talks about the 10 horns that are the 10 kings that are going to receive a kingdom, right? And then it talks about and then the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot and make her desolate and naked, and eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Right? So God has put in their hearts to fulfill this purpose. They will be of one mind, blah, blah, blah. So what we're seeing is there's this woman, the harlot, that used to ride this beast. Now the beast is getting some power, getting some consciousness or whatever, and the beast is going against this woman, right? Now, there in my talk, right, I hope you can differentiate between what I believe, what I think, what I speculate, and what I'm telling you is the consensus, right? Like make your own judgment, I think, right? So um a lot of people will tell you that, or they want us to believe that this woman is the United States and China is the dragon or the beast, the scarlet beast that is going up against the woman. And in first look, in the forefront, this will seem the case because I'm sorry if I'm a little bit like here and there, jumpy, and maybe not as coherent as I would like. I think it's a little bit of hunger, and I'm trying to like wrap this up before the time to break the fast, right? I hope I'm making sense. Anyway, so in the forefront, it would seem obvious that okay, these nations are all aligning themselves away from the United States, and China is taking a bigger role. Even France, right? Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, visited China, and he reiterated, he strengthened his stance on France and the European and Europe in general being less dependent and being less of followers of the United States. And then I think the European Council president also supported this stance that Europe should not be followers of the United States. I can imagine a scenario like um, China has some sophisticated technology, some almost supernatural technology, right? Where some of these leaders come and they see this thing, they see this power, they see this thing that you would say undeniable, right? Undeniable evidence, undeniable proof. And for them, it's like, okay, we have to change our stance immediately, right? That is one scenario. Another thing I believe also is that some of these people are not human beings, but they are like Nephilim. Well, Nephilim are human beings, but you know what I mean. They're like Nephilim or even jinns, like the Christians call them fallen angels, but jinns, right? Devils of jinns that are posing as humans, right? So they are serving an agenda. They might be here acting like they're opposed to each other, but it's part of the agenda, right? And some of them are just puppets of higher powers without knowing it, right? It's like I was listening to Mike from around the world talk about the spirit, right, that governs the United States president. This is something I've also like speculated on before, right? And even Mike from around the world, like I have my suspicions about him, right? Like it's but this is not the topic for now. This is not the topic for now because all these guys have their agendas and whatnot. But even though they might come out as sincere and truthful and all that, okay. So in some of my previous videos, I talked about the magic matrix. I talk about the Revelation 12 sign, which I believe is one of the big rituals, the important rituals. And we see that the Revelation 12 sign talks about the woman clothed with the sun and the moon at her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. When you look at the setup of the United States, initial colonies, there were 13 of them. So instead of 50 states, there were initially 13, right? Which is 13 stars. Virginia was one of those colonies. So if you take Virginia out, then you're left with Virginia and 12 other stars. So there is the Virgin, Virginia, Virgo, and 12 stars, a crown of 12 stars. Now you look at Washington, D.C., it's right on the boundary of Virginia and Maryland, which is the Virgin Mary. So the son that is born from the woman, right, is Washington, D.C., the ruler of Washington, D.C. So they've set up these things. These are not for nothing. These people do not set up things for nothing. You do not see images or things like that just because it's, I mean, think people. Like in the past, there were temples, people worship their gods. This was the reason. We've moved away from that. So they have to reinvent how the temples are set up, how the worship is set up, how the idols are set up. Okay. They set up a lot of rituals. So there is this spirit, right, which they are referring to, that's the Revelation 12, right? And in another part, I talk about the religion of the Antichrist. The title might say something like that. But for me, this is not Jesus. This is not the Messiah, but this is their Messiah who is to be the savior of the world. America goes about the world talking about freedom, freeing people from whatever, uh, right? This is the ruler of the world, right? So, um, but for me, that person is actually the ruler of the pit, who is Apollyon, Abaddon. That is the spirit that governs for me the Washington, D.C. All right. And we, from what I think, I believe is, right, people talk about the sign of Noah, the sign of Jonah, right? I believe that the Messiah, whether in spirit or in actual form, will cross dimension and go into the hollow earth and will bring down the underworld. All right. I believe that would be like the sign of Jonah when he's in the heart of the earth. Okay. And I believe that they know that the underworld is going to come down, right? And because of that, the underworld has to rise up, right? I have also speculated before that Adam, right, the man, the first prophet that God taught the names of all things, he had science and technology, right, to the point that his AI or whatever was far exceeded ours in being in terms of sophisticatedness and power and things like that. So if it's possible that this technology was stolen and is in the underworld and they've been figuring it out, they've been trying to use it, right? And trying to get more power like on earth in terms of how can they be in the center but still uh, exist on the surface without maybe collapsing. So there are things that may be aiding them. All right. So anyway, I believe there is a beast that is set up in the center earth. There is a kingdom that is set up in the center earth, like the hollow earth. All right. But that kingdom has to come to the forefront. I believe it has been ruling us for a few centuries, maybe a century or two, right? But I believe that we now that we're reaching a particular timeline, it has to leave the center earth, the hollow earth, and come to the surface. All right. But they're playing these rituals so that we think, oh, this is what is being fulfilled. China is the dragon going against the scarlet woman, the United States. Even when you look at the figure that represents the United States, right? The Statue of Liberty, where they talk about freedom, but we know it's just licentious freedom, right? Freedom to disobey God, which sometimes, just another diversion, um, people think, okay, yes, you have to surrender to God. And it is by that you achieve the real freedom. It seems counterintuitive, right? Like, why don't I follow my soul, do what I want? That is freedom. That is the freedom that you think about. But in fact, true freedom comes from a process that is a little bit counterintuitive. It's a freedom you get after yourself, your spirit is in total surrender and has become one with all, has become one with God, right? So you've liberated yourself from these prison, the prison of the body, the prison of the earth, right? The prison of lack of knowledge, the prison of ignorance, things like that. So anyway, let's go back. It will seem like China has so much power and is setting up this order wherein um, people go against the woman, they go against the United States. This is what they want us to believe. Now, before I tell you what I believe is actually happening, let me explain to something else that may be related, right? Um, well, first of all, I believe that when a prophet gives a prophecy, right, there are prophecies that are easy to understand. Oh, there's going to be increase in earthquakes and this and that. Yes, so you can give those prophecies. There are prophecies that are for like a short period, maybe like next 50 years, next 100 years. And the prophet might tell you something happening in a particular place, a kingdom falling, so such and such people replacing that kingdom. I think that makes sense. But a prophecy for like the end times, I believe that it's a little bit more hidden, right? To be revealed, the interpretation to be revealed in the end times. So for me to find that the Christians are buying into prophecies which have been fulfilled, many of them before, even the abomination of desolation, it has been fulfilled, right? But they are buying into these prophecies like end time prophecies, and they think like it's so exact and so clear, which is puzzling to me. And nobody is stopping to ask, well, wait a minute, what if people are just playing out these prophecies so that it seems like it's happening right now, right? So for me, the Christians see it as a justification of their belief system. Oh, the Bible is true because prophecies are being fulfilled. First of all, there are prophecies in the Quran, I think, that are hidden, not so like they're not easy to be dissected, right? And sometimes it would take like anyway, let's not get into that. But the Quran has prophecies, but that are for like the end times, the last day, but I think also for like before that, like by around the time of Jesus' second coming. Um, but what was I gonna say? Yes. So I believe that in sorcery, when you want to control people, right? If you let them, if they believe a certain thing, you can use that belief to control them. Okay. Uh, if people believe that a leader that is appointed during an eclipse is the best ruler, and I have the science to know when the next eclipse is, I find a way to have this person become their ruler, and they don't know that this is just gonna happen anyway, right? They will think it's a sign from God. That's their belief. So it's the same thing with Christian prophecies. And that's why the Quran tells us that it is a book of instruction and guidance towards righteousness. It is not a book of prophecy so that you believe, right? Like belief is from God. This is a book that gives you instructions on how to live your life to be guided, how to surrender to God. That is the book, the reason for the book. It is not so that you can see prophecies being fulfilled and you can justify to yourself that you're following the truth. What if you're being deceived? There's a reason the Antichrist in Islam is called the Dajjal. This is a deceiver. This is a master deceiver. So we're seeing this playing out, all right? I believe that whilst they are trying to bring about these prophecies in their rituals, the true prophecies, right? I believe that there are true prophecies that they're trying to play out, right, in their rituals. But I believe there are also some true prophecies that they've twitched a little bit, they've altered a little bit so that they can try to like bring it to pass and it can play in line with the other things they have in their agenda, right? And I believe there are other prophecies they've not touched. They don't care about those. So what I think is going to happen is the true prophecies are obviously going to be fulfilled, right? Whether by God Himself or even by their hands, right? Right? Like by their actions and not knowing that they're fulfilling these prophecies, they actually fulfill these prophecies. All right. And let me give you an example. Okay. Let's say they're playing out the prophecy of the woman, the beast going against the woman, China, all these nations, the new kingdom is forming. They're going against the United States. The United States is going to be weak. It's not going to come to the aid of Israel. This Israel, right? I don't want to call it Israel because I believe it's the counterfeit Israel, right? And then the nations get together. Let's look at Zechariah. Zechariah. Anyway, I don't want to spend time reading this. I think it's Zechariah 11, 12, and 13, and Ezekiel 38 and 39, right? But basically it talks about the end times and the armies like surrounding Jerusalem, right? Attacking Jerusalem. So they believe they're bringing about these prophecies, okay? And there's also a prophecy in Islam that talks about um, the Mahdi or the Messiah when he comes, like um, the people will try to attack him, the armies will try to attack him. So in fact, I believe this is one and the same prophecy. But let me get to that. So if the United States becomes weak, and then and then like China goes against the United States, then it seems like this Revelation 17 is being fulfilled. The beast is going against the woman. And then the United States cannot support Israel. So Israel has to defend itself. The armies come against Israel. It looks like Zechariah and Ezekiel are being fulfilled. Armageddon is setting up, right? That's what they want us to see. Now, let me tell you what I think is actually happening. The United States is not the woman, all right? The United States appears like it's the one controlling things, but the United States is not the one controlling things, okay? It would seem like the United States, the countries have gotten rich because of the United States, the things of fornication and things like that. What if, right? Look at the people who control the banks. Let's call them blacks. Blacks, okay? The blacks, they control the banks, okay? They control they have most of the central banks. So in fact, most of the nations have gotten rich out of the wine of a fornication. These blacks are from Israel, counterfeit Israel, right? So it would seem like maybe, all right, because Rome, Vatican, yes, they've also killed a lot of like Muslims, they've killed a lot of other religious people. So they've been drunk with the blood of the saints, blah, blah, blah. The Roman Vatican, yes, it's a good candidate for Mystery Babylon, okay? But let's look at counterfeit Israel and the blacks, the people who say they are blacks, okay? Yet they are not black, okay? These people, I'm not talking about like Netanyahu, these are just people we see. I'm talking about the people behind the curtain, okay? These people control the world banks, and the nations have gotten wealthy, they've gotten rich from the blood of a fornication. So now it would seem like the Arab nations are going to gather and go against Israel. So in fact, the beast system, right, is going against the woman, the harlot, right? So in fact, even though they're thinking this is Ezekiel, we're trying to make it play out, Zechariah, but in fact, they're fulfilling the actual prophecy, right? Whereas the United States is just part of their ritual for the woman, but it's not the real woman. So whilst they're trying to accomplish one prophecy, in fact, they're fulfilling another true prophecy. Okay. Now, I think the actual Israel will be set up. I'm like I don't think I've met another Muslim who holds this belief about Israel. And that is what is puzzling to me. How is it they've gotten us to believe a certain thing, that I think is so foreign? Like nobody stops and think, wait a minute, why are Muslims all in support of the name Palestine as opposed to Israel? Since when did Muslims love the name Palestine, right? The hadiths, the teachings in Islam tell us that Moses, uh, David, Solomon, Jesus, peace be upon all of them, they are our prophets. We have more rights to them as Muslims than any other people because Abraham wasn't a Jew, right? It's you who came up with the name Jew. The religion has always been Islam, which is submission to the Lord, right? That has never changed. Call yourself a Jew, call yourself a Christian, follower of Christ, whatever. The religion has always been the same. Okay. So if these are our prophets and the Lord chose Israel, right, as the priests, right, above all the people, why are we in support of the name Palestine? Whereas Israel is actually a Muslim nation. So I believe there is going to be a setup of a true Israel by the Mahdi and the Messiah or slash Messiah, because I don't know if it's different figures, right? I don't believe in all the narrations. There's a possibility that they're one and the same. Okay. But I believe they're going to set up the true Israel. And then Armageddon and Zechariah will then be fulfilled, because then the people will actually come against them and say, oh, who are these people? Where did they come from? Right? So the woman that they're telling you, like the beast is going against the woman, China is the dragon, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's what's happening. I think there is a real woman that sits in Israel. And I believe that's the harlot. Okay. So this is what I think is going on right now. I said I was going to talk about some uh, prophecies in Islam. Um, all right, I wouldn't go too long into this because I've exceeded the time I want to spend here. I want to talk briefly about, there's a prophecy here that talks about the Dajjal, the Antichrist, right? It says, we said, let's just see here. We said, oh Allah's messenger, how long would he stay on the earth? He said 40 days. One day like a year, one day like a month, and one day like a week, and the rest of the days like your days, he said. Allah's messenger, would one day's prayer suffice for the prayers of a day equal to 1 year? Thereupon he said, no, but you must make an estimate of time and observe the prayer. So for me, it seems curious that they ask the question about the prayer. And for me, this is what is like hidden in some of the prophecies, right? So some people would not even think to alter this prophecy. They're like, oh, it doesn't even make some kind of sense, right? But and I think that's what a true prophecy like might look like, right? So anyway, what if there's this other body, planetary bodies, twin system coming in proximity to our sun, our solar system, right? And what if the earth, the interior of the earth changes? Uh, Spiritually, that might be the descending of the spirit of the Messiah, right? And physically, this might be the interpretation of events by the earth and other planets and things like that. Okay. So what if the center of the earth can no longer like maintain its viability, right? And it has to collapse, and the system within it, like the world within it, has to like collapse, right? Like has to end. So we know the world above the surface has to end, but maybe the pit has to end first, right? And let's say during this process, the spinning of the earth, maybe it slows down, right? In Islam, there's also like in Surah, I think it's Surah Al-Kubirat, it says either Shams or Kubirat. It says like when the sun is wrapped up, right? So there is a possibility that this might be talking about the end times, like before we all arise for the judgment, when the sun like is diminished, like it's the end, right? It talks also about when the heaven opens and the stars fall, right? So it's almost like this heaven is going to pass, like that chapter is ended, right? Um, but it doesn't necessarily mean this is the actual end day, the day of the end of everything, right? Like I believe this is just around the time of the coming of the Messiah. Like it's part of the end times, yes, but it's not like the day of resurrection, like when they say the two horns will be blown, everything will die, and then another horn, everything will be resurrected, right? So for me, this question, it might seem like there's something that might either block the sun, right? So that, or another body would be, we would be between two bodies, so that even though we are spinning, right, there will be sunlight from the sun and light from the other body, so that it would always be sunlight. And then maybe we would make our way on the other side of the sun, and the opposite will happen because maybe of a gravitational pull, there might be another body blocking the sun and whatever, and we might not get any light at all. Okay. There's also the possibility, I think, that the Earth rotation will slow down significantly, to the point that it would take a year for a full rotation, right? Then it will start to speed up, and then it would take maybe like a month for a few rotation. So I feel like maybe these are the signs of like the Dajjal's coming, right? The system, I believe, is already set up on the earth. Um, I'll stop here, and then maybe next time I'll make a better video and talk about some of these things. Um, I hope the information was beneficial. All right, people, have a good one. Peace be upon you.